A woman had a kid that was larger than her after 3 years of carrying the child. No matter how horrible other people think she is, a mother will never leave her child. In order to take care of the child while everyone else was out, the couple sneaked him home. Nevertheless, the child matured rapidly. He was able to stand and walk before his first month of life had passed. In order to hide him, Cootie's father made a yellow zone within the house. 10 years later, Cootie was an adult. Despite his gigantic height being at odds with the cramped quarters, his parents insisted he stay in the yellow area. Consequently, he was able to break down the walls. The parents were compelled to destroy the house in one night, after recognizing the seriousness of the situation and reconstruct it as a one-story house that was appropriate for Cootie's height. Quickly, the house was reconstructed. The 5-meter-long bed relieved Cootie of the burden of stooping his head every time he entered. Even though the room was now exceedingly lovely, Cootie still yearned for life outdoors. Even though his parents were asleep, he sneaked out at midnight. He disguised himself like a leaf so no one would see him. Seeing so many people on the lawn made him jealous. But then Felix clumsily approached him, as if he were en route to the bathroom. Cootie cowered in fear while Felix, startled, thought he was seeing hallucinations brought on by his heavy drinking. As Felix moved forward to carry on, Cootie withdrew. Felix, who was startled to a lesser extent, advanced to examine the situation. When Cootie realized things were getting worse, she turned around and ran away. His pals thought Felix was simply babbling as he screamed in shock. Cootie thought it would all be done by the next day, but those people did manage to track him down. Cootie allowed them inside and began to show his might when he saw they weren't a threat. Even though he usually worked out alone, he seemed even more pumped up today. In order to expose Cootie to the outside world, the guys took him on a thrilling adventure in a car, even taking him racing with other people. Cootie was the center of attention due to his enormous stature. Cootie was treated to a burger after the party. A beautiful cashier caught his eye, and she seemed to fall head over heels for him the moment he saw the design on her t-shirt. They were instantly smitten, but the height difference made it hard for them to go about their everyday lives. The 5-meter-tall monster was seeing the 1.6-meter-tall woman. Flora was taken aback at first sighting Cootie's pants, and she had to run 100 meters every time he returned home, only to run into his embrace. Upon first meeting, Cootie was captivated by the beautiful Flora and couldn't tear his gaze away from her. Despite his aversion to burgers, he persisted on seeing Flora at the burger joint until he became sick. As if sensing his intentions, Flora would always reply by drawing a heart on the receipt. However, due to her lack of job, Cootie's spending money quickly ran out. He went to his parents for help, but they were still mad at him for sneaking away, so they weren't going to give him any more money. Cootie got a modeling gig so he could buy hamburgers. In spite of how tiring it looked, Cootie kept going because he wanted his burgers and the girl he loved. Finally, Flora felt Cootie's authenticity. Upon seeing Cootie enter the store, Flora wasted no time in approaching him and expressing her feelings. Knowing that Cootie would rather not eat burgers, she treated him to a meal at a Chinese restaurant known for their fried rice and cold dishes. 20 bowls were all it took for Cootie to sate his appetite. Flora escorted Cootie to the shore when they had completed their refreshments. Flora used the containers strewn about the room like a drum set, banging on them to generate energy. Since Cootie had never heard such delightful sounds before, she was ecstatic. The fact that Flora was born at light speed led to the incorrect diagnosis of congenital epilepsy. It seemed as though time had come to a standstill as she watched her parents. Since Flora and her parents couldn't talk on the same frequency, she had to use sticky notes to write down her thoughts, and her parents would respond on a little chalkboard. Flora went to sleep before waiting for her mother to complete writing even a basic greeting since it took so long. This method of communication was incredibly annoying. It would be great if Flora could have normal conversations with her folks. Finally, she came up with a practical solution. She could adapt her speaking and hearing speed to match her parents by asking them to repeat a letter 20 times. At last, Flora talked at a rate 20 times slower than before. Hearing her speak for the first time, her parents embraced her with enthusiasm. In just a decade, Flora had grown into a responsible adult. She didn't think she was moving too quickly, but rather that everyone else was. She was obstructing everyone's view of her job. Things that normally take 5 people to do may be completed by her in no time at all. No matter how long the line was at the register, she could finish in 5 seconds flat. After seeing how hard she worked, her supervisor was happy to give her a raise. Cootie was equally captivated by her speed, and the two eccentrics quickly became fast friends. On Valentine's Day evening, they embarked on their second date. Cootie sprayed himself with half of his father's bottle of perfume, which may have been an effect of his height. He and Flora were in the middle of their blissful bliss when an SMS from a buddy abruptly interrupted them. Despite being denied medical treatment at the hospital, Scat ended up dying from an infected wound. Their friends were speaking out against the hospital's brutal treatment of them. Jones believed that Scat's demise was not an accident. Because the hospital was only interested in making money off of the poor, Scat's wound became worse. He insisted the hospital should shoulder the blame. As he spoke, a huge black cloak fluttered behind him, transporting onlookers to another dimension in an instant. He made it quite apparent here how capitalists take advantage of the common people while they stay silent. The officers kept hurling tear gas canisters at them, but Flora was there and quickly threw them aside. After a while, Cootie decided she had had enough and joined the protest. Surprisingly, a mech officer tackled him and bound him tightly with iron chains, rendering him immobile. This monster, which stood 5 meters tall, was tormented by a group of much smaller thugs. After Cootie accidentally bumped into someone, the enraged person demanded an apology. To Cootie, touching someone on the head was an act of kindness. This surprising gesture just made the guy furious. He suddenly sprang up and delivered a powerful blow to Cootie's face. Cootie was surrounded by a number of his minions in an instant, but it was more like a facial massage and he was uninjured. When Cootie finally had enough, she violently flung them aside. Hercules, a mecha police officer, saw the event. Cootie was obviously the object of his efforts to gain public acclaim and become a hero. Hero failed in his duty as a police officer to eradicate evil and promote righteousness. In reality, he often helped the rich while oppressing the destitute in the shantytowns. All of the local institutions catered exclusively to the well-off, while the poor were denied access to healthcare altogether. The insurance company refused to treat Scat for his small injury since he hadn't paid for it. The security guards violently removed him from the premises regardless of the seriousness of his situation. After a while, he bled out and collapsed onto the floor. Protesters took to the streets as members of the public felt powerless to stop the tragic loss of a friend. This just served to further enrage Cootie, and Hero capitalized on his fury to do something. While dragging Cootie through the streets, Hero tightly shackled him with chains. As soon as this incident occurred, discussions among experts began. A knowledgeable individual has stated that Cootie was innocent and should not have been subjected to such brutal punishment. Someone else, meanwhile, argued that Hero was truly a people's hero, and that nothing he did was illegal or inappropriate. Due to the inadequacy of the jail's space, Cootie was ordered to remain under home arrest while wearing an ankle monitor. Cootie's reputation began to rise as time went on. One fan even sent in a cartoon referring to him as a bully. In his wrath, Cootie tore the comic to shreds because of this. In their desire to see him succeed, his parents resort to violent means themselves. His father took him to a room, and tapping the wall a few times in time, showed him a box containing firearms. Interestingly, his parents had anticipated this day and had armed him in before. Additionally, his father had a bracelet made particularly for him. Feeling immediately more safe with these weapons, Cootie proceeded to confront Hero and demand justice. Bear found himself changed into a toy when he woke up. Before, he could open the drapes with ease. Today, they looked like towering trees. On top of his toy car, he stuck a microphone for a horn and dragged it pathetically to the office. Throughout the entire neighborhood, an unsettling sensation spread, as if everyone had been shrunk in stature. Why was this taking place? Bear didn't understand. They assumed that someone had to have meddled in order for this to have transpired. It appears that Bear is also aware of this. The interests of the upper class were inevitably harmed by his repeated advocacy for the lower classes, making retaliation inevitable. At this point, their only chance of defeating their enemy was to work together. They tracked down Flora and Cootie not long after, and Cootie planned to make sure that those responsible were punished. The power plant abruptly cut off their electricity on a regular basis, so they decided to put their abilities to work and punish it. But Bear insisted that they must form a band before anything else. At this very time, Cootie doubted Bear's capacity to even contemplate forming a band. As soon as Flora's unexpected acceptance arrived, Cootie's envy set in. After they planned their attack, they went to the power plant to demolish the electrical infrastructure. A resounding crash brought down the power plant's billing system, and the monitoring system started playing cartoons. 2 of the security guards broke down in tears from disbelief. The plan seemed wonderful to Cootie, so she was celebrating at home with a party. The room, though, started to shake a little while later. At the same time, the mecha officer was attacking them. Thank goodness their parents had previously dug a tunnel of escape, so they were able to get out unscathed. In his haste, Felix had stuffed Bear and the others into the knapsack before bringing them down the tunnel, but Cootie was too big to fit. Flora was unable to stand to be apart from him, so she flat out refused to travel without him. A 5-meter-tall giant's love for a girl who was just 1.6 meters tall ended tragically. They appeared madly in love despite their enormous height disparity. They thought their joy would never end, even if some people thought Cootie was a monster. The police did all in their power to find him and put him in jail. Thankfully, his mother arrived just in the nick of time to free him from captivity. Someone signaled for Cootie to come closer. He was in the midst of a particularly low mood. Since she was stuck, Cootie ran full speed toward him. As soon as they stepped inside, the man locked the door and put Cootie in a metal cage. Since he believed Cootie to be the progeny of a demon, he planned to use his eyes to save humanity. Cootie was thereafter surrounded by onlookers. Just when the situation was about to get dicey, Cootie let out an innate primal force that sent the crowd reeling. His confidence was dashed the moment he stepped outside. An arrow nearly pierced his heart. Hero attempted a sneak attack, but Cootie swiftly subdued him. Cootie was enraged because he failed to see the rationale behind being treated unfairly because of his size. After realizing he couldn't hold his own against Cootie, Hero began begging for mercy and even went ahead and promised to work with him in the future. After trusting him, Cootie began to relax, unaware that it was all an elaborate plot. A drone secretly hovered behind him, lowered him to the ground, and then slung a rope over his neck. A 2-meter-thick chain was subsequently used to firmly bind him. Hero wasted no time brandishing a mace and pummeling Cootie until the latter was helpless. Jones appeared out of nowhere, unfurled his cloak, and dragged Hero into a parallel universe just as he was about to return Cootie to prison. At this point, Jones showed him how Hero was nothing more than a tool, revealing the true nature of capitalism's exploitation. The protagonist will ultimately discover that he is confined within a cage constructed by the capitalists. A revelation appears to have come to the hero. Until he realized he had become a capitalist puppet, he had always wanted to be a popular hero. The realization caused his inner existence to begin to crumble. The drone grabbed him as he lurched aside. When people give up their faith, they become nothing more than a lifeless corpse.